time, but you know, it's actually making me miss my former meteorologist this morning.
I know.
You know,
that's sweet.
Larry
I miss all 18
Sprinkle.
of mine.
Yeah, weather updates
All
were
18.
great. I thought the green screens were always fun. You know, we could wear
Totally.
green in studio, but of course,
You can on the green screen. Always a floating
They're
head.
saying it's time to go, guys. Wake up, America.
Probably is.
You've had your time. Rachel, roll her up. Benedict, thanks so much. All right, National Report. That starts right now. Well, you've seen it as fighting continues in the Middle East. Some Democrats are blaming Israel for the violence.
So sometimes I don't even use sometimes occupation or not because they don't understand that. What they do understand is that people died solely because of who they are.
Meanwhile, growing concerns about the economy amid rising gas prices and inflation. Is the White House prepared to deal with both of these issues impacting Americans right now?
And it happens again. President Biden confronted by reporters and tells them he is not allowed to answer their questions.
You guys are bad. I'm not supposed to be answering all these questions. I'm supposed to leave.
Good Thursday morning to you. A lot to cover on National Report. We're glad you're joining us. I'm Sean Kreisman.
I'm Emma Reckenberg. Thanks for being here. The Biden administration now facing multiple crises on several fronts. Rising inflation and economic concerns here at home, and also renewed fighting in the Middle East.
But we begin right now with foreign policy front here, where the president is facing increasing resistance from members of his own party.
Newsmax national correspondent Logan Raddick has the latest.
Israel continues to strike Hamas targets, already killing nearly a dozen top commanders. The Israeli Defense Forces are also planning for a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. The proposal gets final approval from the Army's Chief of Staff later today. But the fighting in Israel is happening on two different levels: the rocket attacks and the Jewish Arab riots in Israeli cities like Lod, where Arab Israelis shot at police officers and ransacked a synagogue. Israeli police have arrested more than 375 suspected rioters, including the two suspects in the shooting of officers in Lod. And tensions are running high here at home. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib addressing a pro-Palestinian crowd outside the State Department Tuesday with false and inflammatory claims of ethnic cleansing, trying to convince non-white Americans to support the Hamas-led Iran-backed effort against Israel.
Our freedom is interconnected with black, brown, indigenous. It is connected. What they are doing to the Palestinian people is what they continue to do to our black brothers and sisters here, to the immigrant community here, and enough. So I want you to know this. As you are marching for freedom of Palestine, please know that you must be marching for everybody's freedom. It is all interconnected.
But it's not just the so-called squad. Democratic Congressman Andre Carson is joining Tlaib's effort, daring even Jewish Americans to join the protests against Israel.
If you're Jewish, this is sure enough your fight.
It is our fight.
If you are an American, this is your fight.
And those members said nothing about Americans who don't want to see protected holy sites and the Middle East's only democracy under attack, or how Israel warns innocent Gazans when they're about to strike Hamas targets.
ماشي حاضر حاضر الزنان بتضرب وبعدين ضرب كيف بعدها ماشي بنزل الارض الفاضيه بقول لك مش الزنان حتضرب اول وبعدين تضربوا البرج ماشي عم هذا لسه ايوه خلص ولا يهمك انا بدي اطلع بس لحسن انا والله عادي الامور قضيه هو بده يسمع هو عارف هو مش عارف انه انت غير جو مالك كله طلع من العماره حتى العمارات اللي جنبنا هي واقفين على سبال
And at Tuesday's rally in front of the State Department, a demonstrator equated Israel, a country that's long been a refuge for Holocaust survivors and Jews from Arab lands, to Nazi Germany. Republican Congressman David Kustoff, who's Jewish, says a group of House Democrats led by Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are inciting this hatred at home by not telling the full story.
That there are people who listen to her. There are young people that listen to both of them. And, you know, clearly in the past, one or both have made anti-Semitic comments where their leadership, unfortunately, the Democratic leadership, would not dial them back.
And here's a clash at a demonstration in New York City this week.
He's going down. That man right there.
At this event, a Jewish man was attacked by a mob of Palestinian supporters while attending a pro-Israel rally. And well-known American Rabbi Shmuley Boteach is asking why the White House isn't doing more.
Where is President Biden to show moral courage that the United States stands with those who fight for freedom and not for terrorists?
Exactly.
All right, that was Logan Raddick reporting there. Again, this story continues to garner so much attention as there are dozens dead, hundreds injured, and so many rockets fired in that area. We're going to ask Congressman Matt Rosendale of Montana about this. He joins us live here. In regards to the reaction that we've seen from other congressional members, sir, thanks for coming. What is your reaction to your colleagues on the other side, Democrats, some of them blaming Israel for the recent violence?
Dawn, I think that this clearly demonstrates two things in my mind. Number one, that the United States absolutely must continue to stand with Israel, our greatest ally there in the Middle East, and help them to defend against these attacks. We've seen that the Iron Dome has been critically important to ward off thousands of deaths because of stopping these rockets from penetrating the actual ground and stopping them while they were still in the air. But the other thing that this demonstrates is this terrible double standard, again, that high tech has in controlling the message that gets out. Conservative voices, when they try to put their statements out, their support for Israel, their support or condemnation for the liberty-fighting individuals, we get silenced. And what we see now are the folks that want to condemn Israel able to put their statements out there freely and not have any opposition from the high-tech world whatsoever. This is the argument that we continue to have about Twitter, about Facebook, silencing the conservative voice. And again, myself, I think that we do need to stand with Israel. I think America should be supporting our greatest ally, but there are other voices. And I just don't like the double standard that we have continued to see over the last several years and has increased in activity.
Here is the U.S. president. I'll play this for you. President Biden's handling of this crisis. This is what he told reporters yesterday afternoon in regards to this story.
My expectation and hope is that this will be closing down sooner than later. But Israel has a right to defend itself when you have thousands of rockets flying into your territory. But I had a conversation for a while with the Prime Minister of Israel, and I think that my hope is that we'll see this coming to conclusion sooner than later.
Obviously not a direct condemnation there, not a direct taking a side. Your thoughts on
So we cannot continue to support and try to negotiate with countries like Iran, who have been supporting terrorist organizations like Hamas, who are sending these rockets in to kill innocent people in Israel. And the president needs to step up and make those statements. Again, this is the clear difference we see between this administration and the previous administration. The Trump administration was able to get the Abraham Accords put into place, where we're normalizing relations between the Arab countries and Israel, and we were on a nice track. We saw peace. We saw prosperity. And this administration is unraveling all of that. And this is just yet another example of flawed and weak leadership.
Yeah, a point that must be made when you are explaining this situation is that the militant group Hamas is a center focal point of this there, firing rockets upon Israel, Israel firing back. This is the reality of it. There are so many credible sources that also say Iran is backing Hamas and taking advantage of this situation. That's why so many are asking, why aren't you backing up your ally, which would be Israel? So that is a crisis there in the Mideast. Another one that President Biden is facing, the economic crisis. He held a big meeting with McConnell and McCarthy in the Oval Office. This was yesterday. I'm going to play this for you. This is what he said on his plan for getting things back to normal.
When I ran, I said I wasn't going to be a Democratic president. I was going to be a president for all Americans.
How do you expect to do that, sir? How do you expect?
Easy. Just snap my fingers. It'll happen.
Congressman, your thoughts?
The snapping of the fingers hasn't been working well. We've got an open border. We've got energy prices escalating. We've got inflation starting to spin out of control. Again, stark contrast between this administration and the last administration that had a plan to secure our border, to grow our economy. We need to be focusing on those things, getting our children back to school. And the Biden administration has failed miserably at each and every one of those things down the line. And they are continuing to escalate and get worse. He can snap his fingers all he wants to, but all you're going to hear is music. You're not going to hear things around our country improving.
Finally, before you go, Representative Cheney ousted from her leadership role. She's still obviously a Congress member, but ousted from that third-ranking position. How did you vote on this, sir?
Well, it was just a voice vote, and it was overwhelmingly clear that the conference was ready to be done with Ms. Cheney as the leader. The problem is that if we're going to have someone in the conference chair position, they need to help us develop and deliver a cohesive message for the Republicans. Right now, we have a winning argument. My goodness, just look at all of the subjects that we just discussed. And we should be talking about making sure we restore energy dominance to the country. We should be making sure that we talk about securing our border. We should be talking about getting our children back to school and protecting our Second Amendment rights and our pro-life agenda. And we are not. At any time that we are not talking about that, then the Democrats are winning. And their plan is not working out well for the people across our country. We have seen open borders. We have seen the energy prices escalate dramatically, even if you exclude the problems that we just recently had with the Colonial Pipeline.
Just to be clear, though, you feel that Cheney was not right for that role at this specific time. Is that correct?
At this specific time, I started this 2 months ago, and I'm glad that although it takes a lot longer in Washington to accomplish things, finally everyone has called up and said, yeah, we have been off a message too long, and it's time to replace Liz Cheney.
That's Congressman, thanks so much. Congressman Matt Rosendale, Montana. Good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate being with you.
Got it.
All right, coming up, the White House and New York Times downplaying the current gas crisis and rising prices. Is that what people across the Southeast are experiencing? We'll speak with the chairwoman of the DeKalb GOP, who's also an Atlanta business owner, get her perspective coming up next.